I thought you were going to say, and then Steven Spielberg became a Christian. Welcome back to God Deserves Better, the program dedicated to equipping the saints to create like our Creator. I'm your host, Zach Lovelace.
And I'm your host, Jonathan Laura.
Today we're joined by a special guest, a cinematographer, editor, colorist, and dear friend, Collin Ausbury. Collin currently works for an agency up in the D.C. area, and he's a graduate from Liberty University with a bachelor's degree in the cinematic arts. He worked at a ministry with Johnny and I both as a shooter and editor. He actually has DP'd a short of mine and a music video that got unreleased, and then parts of the documentary that I've been working on. He runs an eponymous YouTube channel where he reviews cameras, lenses, and plugins like Dehancer. And of course, he's CEO of Minty Boy Collectibles, selling Pokemon cards to schmucks like me. Welcome to the show, Collin.
The Minty Boy Collectibles, dude. That was a curveball. I didn't expect that one.
Yeah, man, I gotta sneak it in there. But no, welcome to God Deserves Better.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. It's a blast to chat with you again.
So I gave a little bit of your background here, but give us an idea of where film and Collin first met.
Man, I just go back to the days of YouTube, bro. 2005. I remember one of my first videos I ever made was I had a lemonade stand as like a 9-year-old. And my friend had a crazy friend, and we were just filming him like chasing after cars and slowing it down on Windows Movie Maker. And the rest was history. I just like didn't stop, you know. After that, I just kept making YouTube videos. I was making just sketches that my friends and I thought were funny. They were terrible, and that's kind of the point. You just kind of like eventually work your way up to being less terrible, you know, like one step removed from terrible every time. Yeah, and then in 2010, I was in Florida, and my parents, we checked into a hotel. My parents were like, "Hey, let's go see a movie," and we think you're gonna like this movie. And I'm like, "What is it?" And they said it's called Inception, and I was like, "Okay, sure, I'll go see this. Whatever." All I can say is I think I was a few steps removed from needing to be wheeled to the hospital, dude. My bladder was about to burst, dude. This had me in such suspense as a teenager. I was willing to like undergo surgery to finish and like not miss a plot point. Because as a kid, you can't like re-go to the movie, you know? So it's like,
that's true. Back then too.
I have to know, you know? But I was amazed. No, dude. I was amazed at how captivated this movie made me. I had seen really good movies in the past. I love film, but for whatever reason, Inception, just the topic, the execution, the craft, the writing, the suspense, even the music, like Hans Zimmer's score is like a main character in the film. It captivated me, and it made me realize, okay, like film can do this. That's amazing. Like, what is happening here? How did this happen? How did someone make this? And how did someone make me feel that way? Yeah, and then I just took video media classes in high school, and I say always that there's two great like pivotal moments in my life, and obviously the first one is like coming to Christ as a Christian, Amen. One of the best days of my life, and the second was my video media professor looking at me in the eyes and saying, "Hey, you can do this for the rest of your life. You're pretty good at this." And
wow.
At the time, I just thought I had to get like a history job or like a math job or an English job, you know, because those are our classes, right? I just thought, okay, I need to fall into one of these silos. And video media was kind of like the extracurricular side thing, right? Not the main thing. And so eventually I just was able to make that switch of, wow, I can make movies for the rest of my life. I want to do that. So yeah, that's where it started.
Nice. And then I'm assuming, looked up film programs and then made your way to Liberty?
Yeah. I looked at a lot of film programs. I went to Asbury University. Ironically, that would have been fun.
Collin Ausbury, slightly different.
Right. I toured a couple colleges in Chicago, but at the same time, I wanted to see what a Christian education would look like as a filmmaker, just to have the soil, I guess, like added, tilled right before like trying to grow and plant myself, if you know what I mean. Just because like art for art's sake is you just kind of get lost in it, but maybe I can make some really solid friends along the way, especially from like a Christian perspective. We can go out and make movies. And so, yeah, there's a couple influential people in my life. I can shout them out. This guy named Spencer Cameron, I still know him today. He's a great friend of mine. He kind of took me under his wing, and we started watching movies together when I was visiting one weekend, and he just showed me the ropes of film and helped me to know that, okay, when I go to Liberty, when I go to this film school, I can meet friends like this, and that is probably what is like the key element here. That's probably the most important thing you can do. So, yeah.
So something that we talk a lot about here with God Deserves Better is obviously pursuing Christ with our craft. And you kind of mentioned that a little bit in your backstory. So what would you say is the culmination of that at Liberty? Did you have a moment where you really thought that I'm glorifying God with this? Like maybe a certain project or a certain aspect, a certain skill?
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to just taking a wider look at the industry, like realizing how broken it truly was. I mean, the craziest part about going to school was that there was no talk about family, none. And we'd interview producers and, art department folks and, costume dressers and designers and stuff like that. And you'd ask about their family, maybe, and they'd infer to, being on their fourth marriage, not knowing their kids.
Wow. At Liberty.
At Liberty. They didn't go to Liberty, but we interviewed them, industry folks, people in LA, people in Atlanta, whatever.
Yeah.
And it got me really dialed into that of like, why is nobody talking about this? Why is nobody talking about family in film? And, obviously you say the word family and you kind of think of the word faith, honestly. Why is no one talking about faith in the film industry? So I started asking a lot of questions. So for me, just with my faith, there's a lot of things. I mean, part of the GDB mission is in Proverbs 22:29, and it's, do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. And I know, Zach, you love the word obscure there. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
It's common, unknown. There's so many different translations for that word, but it's true. And I think I just hadn't seen at that point excellence in the Christian sphere. And that really bothered me. It's like, okay, we know our maker. Whoa, we can learn about him. We can know who he is and his character and his design for our lives. And we're dialed into his mind and his heart and his motives and his, we're able to glorify him. And with all of that information, how in the world does the quote Christian art coming out today give off this kind of like, oh, I shouldn't take this seriously, or oh, I shouldn't give this the time of day. It's tragedy. It's a tragedy. And I think, like, just again, the name of the show, God Deserves Better. It's 1000% that. It's just a longing to see good art that glorifies God come out of Christian sphere. And so it was always my mission growing up. I told my parents, I want to make people feel something. I think I had like a third of that right, the third of that mission. The feelings on its own, they don't matter. They don't mean anything. It's really great to make an emotional connection in a film. But at the same time, it's like, okay, how can I speak truth, beauty, and goodness through my work, right? The Vodi Bakum sermon on the 3 trees of the garden in Genesis, we can see God's heart and design, that he makes things that are good just because they're good. He makes things that are beautiful just because they're beautiful. And obviously, they're true. And so that's kind of a rant and a ramble, but like that's kind of the heart of, or the ethos there, I guess.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Kind of crazy how we all had that same thought, I guess, going into our job.
Dude, yes.
That we shared, which is like we can do better. And we all ended up working in the Christian film ministry, or I guess Christian television ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Lord was working some crazy providence, bringing us together.
I would say you're saying God's providence. I totally think it was, because I think I told you guys this story already, but I spent 3 months applying to jobs out of school because I had made a custom email domain, and I had realized 3 months in that every single email I had sent during the summer was being sent to people's spam folders.
Wow.
And you treat finding a job like a full-time job, right? So 9 to 5, applying, literally saying brother, I will take out your trash every day if you like let me work for you. I kid you not, I can find that email.
Wow.
I can attach that. But then, dude, Tommy, one day, dude, he just randomly checked his spam folder and saw my application, and he looked at my reel and he was like, okay, I'm going to give this guy a call. And I wouldn't have met you guys, and I wouldn't have moved to Atlanta if it wasn't for Tommy having checked his spam folder. So God's providence all the way.
And to kind of dig a little bit deeper here, what's it like to pursue the Lord and film post-graduation, post-working at that ministry that we were at? Like where you are now, what's it like pursuing the Lord and film?
After working at the nonprofit that we all worked at, I took a job as a cinematographer at a church, and I learned really quickly the importance of one, community, right? Just having really solid friendships within whatever, but that's on a personal note. But secondly, how important feedback is. Holy smokes. I got the same feedback always from my church body. People coming up to me, no matter what I had done, and saying, and I'm thankful for this, I should say, but it's just saying the same thing of, man, you were like meant to work here. Like that was good. And I heard that for about a year, and it scared me, to be honest, because I thought to myself, I mean, it's like the line of Whiplash, like there's no, two more harmful words in the English language than good job, just on like a spiritual level. And it's just like, okay, is this it? Is this it? And I think all of us kind of working at that nonprofit where, working in a Christian ministry that has very little money, interesting leadership, it can get kind of just like you're, I don't know, scraping the bottom of the barrel to just make changes and stuff like that. That's just kind of how it works. Maybe at a couple churches, at a couple ministries you might work at. But then I started working as a first AC at an organization called Pinkston. And they're a creative agency up in DC. I've been there 2 years now. And I was doing that while I was at the church. And they flew me out to New York. They flew me out to LA. They flew me out to Texas to tell some stories for a pretty significant company. And I was just like, this is really fun. And I wasn't hearing good job. I just realized that my ceiling was just boom. And the coolest part about that, to rope back to your question, is the guys I was working with were believers. So such a cool pairing because you don't get that. That's really, really fortunate. You have to be really fortunate to encounter that. Luckily, the guy that was hiring me on, I went to Liberty with, I graduated with. And again, I have to circle back and say, like, the most important part about going to a Christian college, going to a film school that, is made up of believers, first and foremost, is making those killer friends who like just surrender to Christ, because you will hire them probably for the rest of your life. There's probably 5% of the people in my class are still in film, but the 5% that took it seriously and are still doing it, we talk every week. We hire each other all the time. And so I'm in a very fortunate position because the company that I work for, the boss that I'm directly under, he's also a believer. And then the owner of the company, and it's about 100 employees, he's also a believer. And they have a faith division within the PR part of the agency. And so again, it's a rare occurrence. It's a very rare occurrence. And I'm very blessed to not just work with Christians, to work with everybody, but also to have the core of, okay, again, we have principle that drives us. We have our faith that drives us. We have something much, much bigger than just client objectives or ROI. This is like, what are we building and why? We're asking why a lot. And I think that's comes down to our mutual faith. So I'm thankful for that.
That's cool. Now, in terms of your shared faith with them, do you guys pray together? Do you guys read together? Like, what does that look like? And how maybe has that translated to being on set with Christians? You got your back with guys that are faithful. Does that translate onto set in any way?
Unfortunately, no, not often. Just because it's a very corporate environment. And, it's a little bit of a contrast to what, we experience working at the nonprofit where, it's kind of something we do. Like, I appreciate, Zach, you prayed before we even started filming this. And it's like, I love that mentality. I think up here in DC, it's a little bit more, people are just a little bit more private than you would like, right? Yeah, I'd be more than happy to pray with my team. But that's just the kind of the reality of the situation.
Is there any other difference besides like that from working with the secular crew?
I'd say you're a lot less likely to encounter someone, and again, no matter whether you don't believe in God or you surrender to Christ, there's ego. There's just ego. It's just a thing. But you're less likely to encounter someone who has this like over-encompassing, I need to control everything kind of ego, and more so this like partnership, or just this able to serve one another. You know what I mean? It's like you'll know them by their fruit, right? And a lot of people just demonstrate their fruit. And unfortunately, it's not. I wouldn't say I work with all believers, and I'm not saying just unfortunately because they're not believers, but I'm saying that because some people are just kind of casual about their faith, and I'm not a perfect believer either. That's kind of the whole point. We need a savior.
For sure.
But at the end of the day, knowing that Christ is what unites us, and that at the end of the day, like we submit to Him, just on a behind the scenes level. I mean, that just changes a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what pops in my mind when it comes to like contrasting a Christian set, a total Christian set, because I've been on Christian sets that have been run technically very, very poorly, and I've been run on secular sets that have been technically run amazing. And it's a weird, it might be a false dichotomy to say like, hey, we need one and we need the other. Obviously, it's good to pray before you work, or do anything that you're trying to, especially if the motivation is there to glorify God. But I don't think it's necessary to do a good job, or even to have and display good Christian character. It doesn't need to be that, like just these things, or I'm out here reading a Bible verse, or I'm out here praying, over my meal while I'm on set. Right. It doesn't need to be that obvious. I feel like, again, being a human is really a sticky, weird thing, and stuff doesn't happen as cleanly like that. I've had people at work say like, "Hey, I don't hear you cuss," like brought up to me. Three separate times have come up to me and said that, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I try not to. You just don't hear me do it. But I go to the bathroom. No, I'm just kidding. But there's this witness that you just have the Holy Spirit, and so you're just going to carry yourself differently. Like you said, there's this ego death that a Christian, presumably an active Christian, would have walking on set. That they've been humbled by their God, and so they're not going to pick a fight. Hopefully, it happens. It happens, of course.
Right.
We still carry our flesh around with us, so we can make total mistakes, often more flagrantly than non-Christian people, because God likes to humble us in front of them.
Yeah, that's right. I just jumped on a set recently, and I think the guy was joking, but you never really know. I was under an op for a camera, so I was first ACing, which is a really wonderful role, I think. And the first thing he said to me is like, "Oh, you're Collin? Awesome, dude. We're gonna do drugs." And it's like, yeah, that's kind of the world you're jumping into. And even if he's joking, it's like, yeah, for the people who are very sheltered and XYZ, maybe homeschooled, maybe whatever. That's kind of the world that you're jumping into, of just like crazy stories, people coping with the stress of set in very interesting ways. And like, again, it's interesting. It's like you were saying earlier, Zach, we were talking off camera, but talking about contrast, man. To be able to be a light and not even just be like, carrying your Bible around, but it's like, I don't do those things that you do. And it's not because I just don't do them. It's like, well, after set or during lunch, or there's times for conversations to come up. And I love asking like, where do you come from? Like, what's your basis? And inevitably we start talking about Christ, which is really cool. And so again, it's like people are going on mission trips all over, the world, and yet there's an entire industry that needs kind of the same thing, right?
People who are really open and vulnerable and will just say things to you that on set you do wait around and talk a whole bunch. There's not a lot. I mean, when action's happening, of course, you're all in it, dialed in. But when it's not, you're just sitting around and waiting. And you're the guy who's holding the boom, or whatever, or you're standing next to that guy for hours on end. And you quickly get to Christ. So
I was recently on a shoot in Las Vegas, and being on set there, it's Sin City, so people want to go and have fun after the filming day, and we all go out together. And I was typically the one who just wanted to stay home for the night or go back to the hotel. And so, what would you say to people who are maybe more like me? Is that maybe the right strategy to go, or is it maybe go on more of an evangelism journey?
Bringing up real world examples. It's the same set. I worked, and Wednesdays I lead a small group of high schoolers in student ministry. And so after set, one of the crew members came up to me and said, "Hey, we're going to go like eat and like go to like a hookah bar or something like that. You want to come?" And I just responded like, no, thanks. Like, I'm good. I like have a prior commitment. And I just told him what I did. It's like, I mentor students. Like, we have a small group and stuff like that on Wednesdays. So yeah, thanks for the invite though. And I think just your absence also speaks a lot. You're the contrast, you're the black sheep, you're the whatever. A small light really goes a long way. And honestly, people who kind of go against the grain, I just remember them. I remember the way that they behave. I recall things that they say or the way that they talk. I mean, eventually over time, especially if you're on like a full length, it's like there's something going on with this guy. There's a reason that this guy is like, especially, and the coolest thing is like if you're a servant on set, like if you serve other people and you're really determined to just make sure everyone has what they need, like you're taking care of people, like they also notice that. So there's a lot to notice, you know?
It's coming out of your fingertips and everything that you do, you know?
Yeah, it's really
I think
cool.
Zach even mentioned it on Steven's interview a couple episodes ago, but evangelism is also just being absent sometimes. That does speak a lot, kind of also to what you were just saying, Collin, so...
In the same way, Johnny, dude, I'd also be like, yeah, I'm going to hit the hotel at night for sure after a long day. I'm not a huge like extrovert either, but I was also on a music video shoot, and it was at a church, and I talked to this gentleman who's a director. We connected on Instagram, and he was one of our cam ops, and he said, or I just asked him, hey, like, do you have a church you go to? And he paused, and you could tell, like, okay, there's definitely something there, right? There's definitely either hurt or there's, he's thinking it, he's thought about it, right? And so we just had lunch, and I just asked him, like, hey, like, where do you come from? Like, why do you believe what you do if it's not, the God of the Bible? And you can get a lot of different responses from a lot of different people. He was very respectful, and he just said that I just haven't been convinced yet. And he's like, baby, you'll be the one to convince me. And what I could have done that I didn't do is like start to walk through it. It didn't feel appropriate. But what I did say is just like, no, honestly, I'm just trying to hear where you're coming from. And then usually questions get asked like, what about you? And then that's when you can just openly share about like, bro, like my strength comes from Christ, Unfortunately, there's not like a clear window like that all the time. Yeah. I did turn around and I messaged this guy on Instagram after he said, hey, it was a pleasure working with you. And I said, hey, man, I know you said that you haven't been convinced yet. And I just kind of laid out like the reasoning for why I believe what I do and said, hey, like before God, we have two choices, man. He's made it very clear we can get to know the God of the Bible through his word. He's not a mystery. We have two choices, and he's made that choice to you. And I said, honestly, man, like I'm saying this in light of the fact that you might not ever hire me again. You might not ever reach out to me or want to talk to me again, but I'd be amiss if I didn't just say this. Just honestly, like I open it up to you if you ever want to talk about these things. And I saw he read it. He never responded. And honestly, yeah, like what I tell my high schoolers is like we can preach the gospel, but we can't control people's response to the gospel. You can never control it. And so, yeah, it's just like, are you saying the truth? So, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to make this entire thing evangelistic, but
no, it's really interesting. And the thing is, too, people's reaction, what I have found is the more violent the reaction, the more hit that person is.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, okay, center mass, that person got hit and they are mad. It is absolutely challenging them wherever they might be. But no, that's great. Just being really inquisitive and not just like running around again with a Bible under your arm. Not that you shouldn't have a Bible nearby, but just playing a long game. I think being really patient. A lot of people get jumpy in the evangelistic type scenarios that I've been in.
People get weird.
People get weird, and they think you can. It's like a sales thing. You get it and you give it to them, and then they just go there and they say yes or no. I mean, a lot of times anyway. But then, I mean, a lot of times you're just stuck with that person now. You're still working with them. Like, so it continues going. So it's not like they roll the credits. I gave them the gospel presentation and they said no. They may remember that. And evangelism is something that I think the three of us really care about, especially our background at the ministry we're at was an apologetics ministry. And so we all have, for lack of a better way of putting it, a training in that. And it makes it really interesting to have conversations with people.
Yeah, it does.
I would recommend, if you're going to be on a film set, if you want to pursue film as a career, that you should study apologetics, because you need to be able to have that intellectual judo to be able to answer. You got to be able to study these issues and see how people watching debates is an amazing thing to do. I'll watch a 3-hour debate or listen to it over the course of like a whole week or whatever. And you start to see there's not a lot of rabbit trails people can go. I mean, they can hit you with lots of different weird tactics, but there's not a lot of actual intellectual answers. And something to really feel out is whether or not someone like the guy that you talked to seemed pretty open. You're going to have like a good faith conversation, no pun intended, or a bad faith conversation where the person really is just trying to bully you. And I think Johnny and I have both interacted with people like that before. And the best thing to do is just really just try and serve that person, and being on film sets will give you the opportunities to do that. So, Johnny, it looked like you had something you wanted to say.
No, I was just going to say, all of this kind of ties into an interesting thing that we all deal with we all worked in a Christian ministry together, now in secular work environments, and something that we always have to think about, at least I do, I'll speak for myself, but I'm pretty positive you guys do too, is that at any moment my job can be on the line. And it's kind of what you said to that one guy. Like, I don't know if this means I'll ever get to work with you again if I say this, but because of our beliefs, we're in the negative world now. And we're always at that risk. And so that's something we always have to carry. And it's a burden, but again, we have Christ. We are more complete, and it's not for the money, Again, this is for glorifying God.
It's not about the money.
Back to Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, we're all Nolan heads over here. And actually, I totally agree, Johnny. Like, I didn't want to undercut your point. It just seemed too perfect. No, I heard what you said in a Joker voice, so, whatever. But
that's all I had to say, but
yeah. That's great. To get us a little bit back onto my show notes that I had here, I want to hear more from Collin in terms of some of the toughest but most rewarding projects that you've worked on.
Copy, dude. Yeah. Sorry. Wow. It's so ingrained. It's copy.
Copy, dude.
Yeah. One of the hardest projects I've ever worked on was this year. I told you guys about it. It was a work for a government agency that archives and tells the stories of veterans who served in many, many wars. They maintain the 24 cemeteries around the world that basically foster American soldiers and represent the U.S. And so they came to our company with this initiative. Okay, like, we want to make these micro documentaries, and on June 6th, we're going to have the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And so, it was a tall order. We just had to fly to multiple different states and interview many different veterans, multiple who were 99 and above. If you do the math, 80th anniversary of D-Day means that the soldiers, lowest was probably 16 when they went in. So we interviewed the youngest living veteran from World War II. I think he was 96. He lied about his age to get in. It's kind of a wild story there. He was a tank battalion crew member at 16. Can you imagine that in today's day and age? Wow. Holy smokes.
Dude, no.
And so we flew all over the place, and I had the pleasure of working with some DPs as well. Most of the time, just in my role as a creative producer, I do a lot of pre-production, production, and post. I do everything. And it's really helpful when you slide into one role to understand, okay, now I know what I'm looking for. Like, what kind of needs do I need to solve here? So a part of this project, man, I was working with a lot of different DPs and people under me. And it was really cool to interview these veterans and to tell stories in a cinematic way. Typically, what had happened is they just kind of plopped one camera in one angle in front of these veterans, in front of a black backdrop. And we were just like, I think there's something more we can do. And so we took a filmmaker's approach. We staged the set so it's very pleasing to look at. There's leading lines. The light looks really soft and nice and diffused and awesome. The hardest part about it was there were 7 projects that needed to be done to basically be ready to play in Normandy on June 6th. And it was like February. And so it's like, okay, that on top of working 9 to 5 on other clients' projects. So it wasn't just that one.
Wow.
It wasn't just all like pre and then production and post on that. It was that on top of real estate clients, on top of government work, on top of
Are you guys managing your own schedules too at the same time, or is someone else kind of helping you with that?
Managing our own schedule too. Yeah. And then imagine on top of that, people are interjecting your calendar with meetings about things that they need, like because they can't log into the Dropbox or they can't do this, or you haven't been active on Slack. And so it threw me into this, I would say, like depressive place. It's just kind of like a dark time for me because one day a week I'd be staying at the studio until 11 p.m. just getting that solid focus session in, because I just wasn't interrupted at that time of day. No one was, emailing me. No one was shooting me a Slack. So I was really thankful for that time to just dial in. And it was like the week before, and I'm on the plane editing, and I got 1 hour of sleep after a full day's work. And then we had a 4-hour drive once we landed in France to go to Normandy, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I'm falling asleep. And my mind is just swirling in circles. Like I just can't make any more decisions, Yeah. Like I'm out of the decision-making juice. Can't do it. I can't do it. And I had to tell my driver, I was like, dog, and he's my coworker. And I'm just like, bro, I can't do this. I have to go to sleep. I have to take a nap. So anyway, we have a weeks long of finishing a microdoc every day of the week up until June 6th. Then June 6th rolls around. It's the day that they're going to present our flagship piece to a crowd of 11,000 people. And it's the sweetest day of my life because, at least for the year, because I had no more work to do. All my work was done, and now everyone else had work to do, right, on like making sure the event went beautifully. And meanwhile, my work is done. So I dusted off my hands, and I got to meet Steven Spielberg that day and Tom Hanks. And I got to, my buddy filmed a video of them in the front row looking like just watching our film. And like never in a million years would I would have woken up this year and thought, okay, I'd be in this position. But again, I just, my team was awesome. The crew members I hired were awesome. A couple of them, Alan Ember, Michael Hartman. We have Luke Fletcher, just really, really awesome guys, really awesome camera guys. Michael's my coworker. He's awesome. Great producer, great camera guy, editor, sound design guy. So, again, it comes down to my crew. We had to be super, super lean. But yeah, we pushed through it. And, I'd say if we were to do it again, there's so many things that I would go back and say, hey, we need boundaries on this. But, as a single guy, it's like, okay, I'm going to lean into as far as I can go and see where my limit is. And I think I found it on this one. So
you found it in the 4-hour car ride falling asleep.
Yeah. Dang, dude. It's miserable.
Dude, Proverbs
praise God.
22:29. Your work was being shown before kings of cinema, or king of cinema.
The coolest thing was one of my coworkers, who's also a believer, he goes to my church. It was just me and him. It was after 5, one day after June 6th. We were both back in the office. He saw me, and he was there that day, and he just had a big smile on his face, and he said one of the most like direct compliments I can remember in my life. He said, he's like, you know what? I was so proud to be there that day But I was more so proud because I was thinking about you, and I was thinking about how important a day like this is for you. And he said Proverbs 22:29. He's like, I read this morning, and I thought about you. And he's like, you stood before kings that day. You opened, like the video opened up for the president of the United States. Like you stood before kings, and the verse is true. Like that happens. And I just hadn't thought of it like that before. And I will never forget that he said that he was just willing to say that to me. I was really grateful.
So the president saw it too.
It welcomed up the president to speak.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude. What was it like meeting Spielberg? And you said you met Tom Hanks too?
Well, I was filming B-roll of Tom Hanks. He was right at the front. I think Tom and Steve come to these veterans events and things because they did
Saving Private Ryan.
I'm drawing a blank on it. Saving Private Ryan. They did. Mm-hmm. They produced Band of Brothers, and so I'm filming B-roll. I'm like probably a couple arms distance from Tom Hanks, filming B-roll of him. I look to my left, and Steven Spielberg is there. And over the walkies, I'm hearing, okay, Steven's here. And I'm, behind my laptop editing in this sound stage. And I'm like, oh my gosh, whatever. I'm just going to be down here. I need to go outside and get some sun.
Yeah.
And so I'm filming B-roll of Tom. I look over, Steven is standing there, and there's no one by him. And it's just, there's no people by him. And he's in the front row. And so he looks at my camera, looks at me, and I realized there's nothing in between us. So I just stopped recording. I put the camera down, and I just walked up to him and I said, hey man, you're one of my heroes. Do you mind if I get a photo with you? And took the photo, and he's pretty short. So I'm in the photo, I'm towering over my man. He asked me, who are you? Who are you with? And I said, well, we put together a lot of the content that we're about to see on the screens today. And immediately then the event started. And so it was short and sweet. I didn't have a time to just completely embarrass myself in front of my guy. And I just said, it was a pleasure to meet you. And I just walked away. And I was like, okay, well, God, what else you got today of all days? So really thankful. Really, really amazing experience.
Yeah, dude. Praise be to God. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That is such a testament, like you said, to Proverbs 22:29. Obviously, your friend even said that and providentially had read that, and it's just, whoa, that's awesome. And then for you to be able to have a really clean interaction with Steven Spielberg, just in and out.
Oh, yeah.
You leave, you gave him the Irish goodbye.
Yeah.
Sir, I think Duel is better than Jaws. Whatever.
Whoa.
That's a hot take.
Close encounters of
That's a pretty hot.
Yeah, Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
What kind were they? I don't
Fourth
remember.
kind.
Yeah. Richard Dreyfuss.
I gotta go.
I gotta go. Dude, yeah. So that's obviously Oh, go ahead, Johnny. Go ahead.
And then he became Steven Spielberg's Pokemon card plug, I guess.
Dealer.
Yeah.
Dealer. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, and then Steven Spielberg became a Christian.
Not as funny.
That's not as funny.
Hilarious.
That's not as funny.
Pokemon cards through the medium of Pokemon cards. My man's like, I need to repent.
Yeah. I can't think
I saw
of
Jinx, and I was.
yeah. Mr. Mime, really. Ooh. I saw Hunter.
I'm a sinner.
Ooh.
No, of course, it would be amazing if Spielberg repented.
Yeah, brother Spielberg, if you're watching, I'm just saying. But no, dude, that is amazing. That seems definitely from beginning to end, very tough. Obviously, bodily, tough that you were just burning the candle at both ends. But then to have that at the end and see the Lord smile on you with that, even saying the verse to you through a friend of your work is playing before kings because you have been faithful in this skill and giving it to me. So, dude, I'm proud of you. After hearing that story, I'm proud of my boy.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, guys.
And obviously, you sent us
grateful.
the picture. You just dropped that picture hard into our group chat.
I know. Yeah.
It was oh, okay, great.
Yeah, Zach. We talk about going away. Is this the whole meme and thing on Instagram where it's disappear for 3 months and learn Korean or something, and we have the whole just disappear and do awesome stuff and then like come back and talk about it. Like don't tell anybody about it. And that's like something we should probably talk about sometime. That'd be really fun to talk about. But that was one of those things where you were dropping like scripts and, you know, short film ideas and like people are just throwing stuff in the chat. People just upload a video, not having talked about it. And it's like, what is this? Let's go. So our chat was just full of that stuff. And
it's so energizing.
Sweeter than just being like bombed by like, whoa, sick creative output. Let's go, dude. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, cool, I mean, that's a very hard principle that all of us try and hold to. It's not easy, but just work in secret, you know, get buff, but wearing the pump cover, you know, you wear the XL shirt. And so like nobody knows you're getting buff. And then like during summer, you take your shirt off and whoa, Collin's hot. That's the best metaphor I have for you guys. Whatever. To kind of pivot us, because that was a good story.
Natural transition into
natural, very natural transition. We're natty here. When do you feel the most fear when it comes to your career?
Oh, for sure. I think in meetings, to be honest with you, meetings that are like high stakes. Seriously, and it's not often like as a filmmaker, you probably don't have to jump into like a ton of calls and meetings, but like we have to talk to a ton of clients, and it's gotten a lot better over time. But at the beginning, you just have to know how to navigate and like lead the room when you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea who this person is. You don't know how they relate to anyone in your company. Someone asked you to join the meeting, and now you're running the meeting, and so it's like, okay.
That sucks.
What do you do? So, honestly, like without experience, that becomes impossible, and you just embarrass yourself. But after 2 years, you're like, you just know how to navigate that situation. So, I think that's where a little bit of like anxiety comes in. I'm working on that. I think another thing would be, fear would be being trapped doing the same thing forever. That's just you know, it's not necessarily ambiguous. It's just kind of like it's
you
not
become
real.
An editing machine. You edit the same kind of thing just over and over again, or I guess in a similar vein of whatever aspect of the industry you're working in.
It's just the idea of like non-growth, like stagnating, man, drives me crazy. And I think lastly, it would be like being on a very like high pressure set and, you know, needing to lead and not having any background. Again, it's like coming to something unprepared. That just, there's just a fear there. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I need to go up and speak. I have no idea what to say. It's that feeling, but like on a work scale. Fortunately, it doesn't happen a lot of the time, but yeah.
I think those are pretty universal in terms of fears. And it rings true for all the other DPs I know that you're very nomadic, you know, just doing different things all the time. Can't be a 9-to-5 guy, or if you are, it's working with, you know, a dozen different clients doing different things all the time. It's not just making widgets every day, editing, you know, again, like Johnny said, the same kind of thing over and over again, shooting the same kind of thing. Yeah, you can grow in character, I think, doing the same thing over and over and over again. You know, your patience, you can try and like hone that thing that you're doing. You can always get kind of closer to 100%. But
it might be for like a season, you know, who knows? You might find yourself in that scenario. I don't think it is something like, of course you want to always grow, but I would say like it might not be bad in the moment. God uses it in a way that you might have no idea how he's using it. But I get that. I do want to not stay stagnant. So it's totally true.
Yeah. Facing your fear of being stagnant, I think is, and like whatever it is that you might be afraid of, like choosing to speak publicly. People talk about this all the time in terms of facing your fears every day, doing something that you're afraid of every day. And then one day you won't be afraid of it. It's very true. As leading meetings and stuff like that at work, that happens to me all the time. And I think I've just learned to BS my way through tons of things. You just, you know the words that people need to hear, or then you punt to somebody else or whatever. But yeah, that's, you know, to kind of make it relatable to our audience, I would say, like Johnny's saying, buckle down and do things for a long time, but also chase that type of stuff, chase those types of scenarios. And if you're anxious about leading a meeting, like volunteer over and against your flesh. I'm not saying this to you, Collin, but just in general, someone growing in these things.
Yeah. We've all had that stagnant position where we're just cranking out the same stuff.
That's mind-numbing.
Yeah.
For sure. Let's say I'm a director. How can I make sure that we have the best working relationship with you as a DP?
I think structurally we just have to talk about like what a director does. And I think we can find our answer there. So I think some of the best times that I've had with a DP is with a director is when they have just such a clear vision. And I think like just metaphorically, if we think of like two different kinds of problem solving where you're solving objective problems and you're solving subjective problems. DPs and directors typically solving subjective problems, right? The director writes a script. Their story is theirs, right? They know the characters, but nothing is really set in stone unless like the director has such a clear vision. It's like, no, this has to be this way, right? Mm-hmm. It's such deep creative conviction that the problems almost become objective because the characters are so dialed in, right? And then working as a DP with that director, it's like, okay, this scene, you've communicated to me, you know, what is happening in the scene, what the point of the scene is, what emotions this character is feeling, what the conflict is. And now we're working within like boundaries, which is great. The greatest thing, or just to say the worst thing that can happen is if you're working with a green director and they don't know their characters, they don't know their script, they don't know why we're in this scene in this particular moment, and they say like the dreaded words, what do you think? And like a story wise. And now it's awesome because you can collaborate. Like there's like if you're friends and you're working on a group project together, there's something really sweet about collaborating and trusting your friends with like creative decisions and whatnot. But at the same time, the DP is a problem solver. I need to know the problems that I'm solving. I can't be thinking of the problems I have to solve and solve them at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I love First Day Seeing. First Day Seeing is objective problem solving. It's really sweet. You can just dial into it. You fall into it. It's either in focus or it's not. The lens is either working or it's not. It's either the right lens or it's not. It's very relaxing to me because I'm not operating in that like hyperactive, subjective, nothing is dialed, nothing is certain or nothing is firm, you know, and we're making this up as we go. The lighting can look different ways, you know, so I think working as an AC is just much more smooth. Now, working as a DP is really smooth when your director knows his stuff, for sure. When I tell my clients, we had a conference call with another production company. They were asking us just some advice, and I like to even explain to our clients, you have to know. So essentially, pretend you're a bridge builder, and you need to know where the heck you're building this bridge. Like, where are we going first? What two cities are we connecting here? And we need to know, okay, who's expected to go over the bridge? What load capacity do we need? What materials can support that load capacity? XYZ. There's a lot of people who just want to build something and they just put it out in the ocean and it just goes to nowhere, right? But if we know where we're going, we can reverse engineer that and be like, all right, what do we need based on our experience and what I've seen in the past that works to carry the right kinds of people across this bridge to get them to where we want to go, right? And I think a lot of that just comes with experience. And honestly, a lot of the DPs, I just had to look this up before we even talked, but a lot of DPs, like 75% are above 30. Like 40% of them are above 40. And so it just takes time. It takes time to gain that experience, to be the expert, to be that problem solver. The DP is a problem solver. And the mark of a really good DP is allowing the director to be in this really creative flow state and to allow him to know that, oh, I can do that thing because my DP can help me solve this problem. He knows his stuff. He's got creative conviction. So that's a very umbrella, like wide answer to that question. But some of the sweetest moments are when the director has an amazingly clear vision.
I love that. So a fantastic answer. Following this even further, now, if someone is pursuing this career, you're saying it's going to take time. Obviously, they have to really have some calluses on them, and know their stuff technically. How do you develop style as a DP? We talk about the technicalities of it, knowing which lens to use on this shot, knowing which light's going to do what, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of style, what have you found is an effective way to develop that in yourself?
A lot of times when I'm teaching my kids, like in Bible study, sometimes like we say a lot of words that we just have said over and over and over again, and you just kind of lose the meaning of like, what does that mean? And so like defining the word is really helpful. And so I just made up a definition for what style is, and it's your practiced preference. It's your continuous practice preference. And you gain your preferences by watching and consuming, but then it's paired with the practice, and then eventually, without you even knowing, your style just emerges. It just emerges. And, there's the book by Austin Kleon that says, like, steal like an artist. I really appreciate that because no art is original. Take everything that you love and combine it and squeeze it into one. But you have to execute, because a lot of people that I know, including myself, we go into tutorial hell, right? We keep consuming with no output. You don't have a style. Your style's in your head. It doesn't exist. When you practice, you can look at it and actually be able to be like, all right, it's objective. It becomes objective. It's on the table. Even your friends can give you creative, constructive feedback on that. And you can actually make progress once you do that, which is a really sweet thing. So, and then over time, you just naturally, your style just emerges. So practice your preferences.
As someone who's worked on Christian cringe, do you think they have a style, or what is their approach to style typically? Do you see, and how could
Christian
they fix
cringe?
That? Yes.
Oh man, are we talking about the? We're talking about this. I can't even say the name.
Do you want to say?
We're not explicitly talking about the Trump Prophecy, which is a film, a Christian cringe film that somebody in this call here has worked on, but we won't say who.
There's a fourth guest and he hasn't said anything. It's not me.
Yeah. There's somebody on this call. It's just, okay. But the Trump Prophecy being Christian cringe, or something like God's Not Dead 18 or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
So do I think there's a style in Christian cringe?
Or how do they even approach? How do you think that kind of person approaches that, and how could they fix it?
Yeah. Well, I think you guys have answered this in multiple podcast episodes, and I appreciate that a lot, because I think it was both of you guys talking, and it might have been Zach, your conversation with Dan, but you essentially said that there's the Christian fartists, right, who just lean into the craft. They're so heavy on craft. There's no rooted message. It doesn't stand for anything. And then there's the hyper 1000% message, but the craft is lacking, because they're hiring people that don't have any experience. They're hiring their friends' sons, their friends' sons' son. It's just like, who are these? Who's operating these roles? And so it's a wonderful thing that you can help Christians to gain experience, but at the same time, you got to pair both. Honestly, if we're talking just brass tacks, it's just respecting your audience. Respect your audience. Just make something that's captivating. Honestly, when you guys were talking about Whiplash, it's make a good story. And it's funny because it's a joke. You can do that easily. But no, seriously, make a good story about real characters who experience real things. And this is kind of an aside. You're talking about style here, but one of the reasons I got into filmmaking as a Christian is just because I think Christian films do an injustice to people. And it's not just that they're bad or they're cheesy, but a lot of the films that I saw in film school, primarily in the screenings and stuff, they tell a big lie. And you'd think, what? Are you serious? It's yes, they tell a big lie. They say that once you become a Christian, you never sin again. The character at the end of the story never struggles with sin ever again. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And so it's not even just on the skill and the craft and the style, it's the messaging. The messaging, you tied it up in a bow, but God's world doesn't have this perfect resolve until Revelation. In the meantime, we're still being sanctified. You're taking out the entire process of Christian growth, sanctification. So it's like, to sum up what I brought up at the beginning, it's like the mixture of the Christian artistry with the messaging. Like you have to be skilled in your craft, to be a skilled craftsman, but at the same time, know truth and just combine it, please. There's got to be folks who are dialed into both and who can make a team to do both. I think it's possible. And that's why I love what you guys are talking about all the time.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. That's a very well-spoken answer. And it was funny, before you told me what you thought the lie was upon your analysis of a lot of Christian cringe films, which I believe is true, I think it as well is that the Christian cringe films tend to inherently communicate or implicitly communicate that God doesn't care about beauty. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
And so, and care about craft and care about you getting better. And in a lot of ways that the Christian
in a meta
life
sense,
is,
yeah.
In a meta sense, of course. But God doesn't care about, it's communicating that God doesn't care about life beyond evangelism or beyond a very, very narrow application. And often like hollow application, like saying, oh, just reading my Bible is going to make my marriage better. That's actually not true.
Text
as
your
hard
friends,
as it is
God's
to hear
not
that.
Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Text your friends. Yeah. Shine your flashlight in the air and whatever that movie is.
Yeah.
That's one of the movies I'm talking about, actually. Yeah, the character never drinks at the end ever again, and it's again, it makes sense for the community. You want to share with your kids like the hope of the gospel, that there's hope in this life 100%, but you're missing it. If someone comes to Christ through one of these movies, like, praise God, but they're going to be really disappointed when they realize, like, wow, now it's my flesh against the spirit. Are you kidding me? The war is being raged. We never talked about the war. Go ahead.
I wanted to play cringe's advocate here. In the film, just what we've talked about, Whiplash, the film just ends, and the story obviously goes on after the film ends. I'm very interested in what happens after the big finale of Whiplash. But I guess in the Christian cringe film, where the story ends usually isn't interesting enough. I don't know. Repentance, a moment of repentance is amazing, and it's hard to capture that on film. And maybe it's just something we shouldn't toy with. I don't know. That's kind of like a gray area. I don't know.
I think it's just fundamentally unearned. Those moments of repentance are unearned. They're too manufactured, too inhuman. One of my favorite moments of repentance in any film is at the very end of the bridge on the River Kwai, which won Best Picture in 1953. Alec Guinness, the guy who originally played Obi-Wan Kenobi.
It's on my list. I haven't seen it.
It's in my top 5 very easily.
Nice.
But the way that film ends, it earns this character repents. I don't think that's really that much of a spoiler, but at the last possible second, he repents. And it's not like I'm repenting before the Lord, but he's turning back from his error that he was in. He's exemplifying biblical repentance in many ways. But yeah, I think it's just unearned and not rooted in God's reality of like how people act and stuff. And I get it. There's like Tarantino characters that aren't real, but it's entertaining to watch them. So there's a little bit of grace given in that way. But you just, Whiplash specifically, how it ends, you can very easily, based on the text itself, imagine what the end of that movie, like whatever it is you want 10 minutes after that would be, or 20 years after that. Like Andrew Neiman is going to die because he gave himself fully and wholly over to Fletcher's vision for life, which was actually death because it's idolatry.
And he will be known. He will be known.
And he will be
at the
known.
cost of excellence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's obviously a whole other podcast episode. But yeah, I think that would be the really truncated. And like Collin said, we have talked a lot about this and the inner workings of these things. But I will start landing our plane here. This will probably not be the last time we have Collin on, so we'll hear more from Collin at some point. But I wanted to ask you 2 questions here. Where do you go to continue learning, and who's your main in Smash?
Oh my gosh. I go to YouTube University. It's free. Seriously.
Amen.
I mean, the homepage, bro, it's just, there's a plugin that you can get that disables the videos that they recommend to you because, dude, it's like, I can't make eye contact with the thumbnails before there's like 10 different branches of study that you can just go down depending on your feed.
Ooh,
now,
so
it's probably just memes and like Pokemon, fun facts and stuff like that. But a lot of the time it's like, the latest camera or this lens line compared to another cinema lens line. And it's just like, oh man, there's so much to learn. There's so much to study. And I'm just in a constant environment of that. It's a lot of fun. And I think, honestly, it's really cool. I'm in a fortunate position where my job, I just do a lot of everything. So what that helps me to do is just get a better understanding of like why something is important. There's people on the very top of the company who don't have their hands in the nitty gritty, and they assume everything is like one way or this can be done in 20 minutes. And if you've done the thing, you're like, holy smokes, like this is really important that we have a very specific person and a craftsman in this role and XYZ, and this actually takes this amount of time. So that holistic experience, I think, has really served me well. And it's also taught me that I don't want to do everything beautifully. You know what I mean? It helps you focus. Right, it's the clarity by subtraction.
What are some YouTube channels you could recommend to some of our viewers, listeners?
And where can we find your stuff?
For sure, yeah. There's a company called Tenfold Productions, I think, on YouTube. They're awesome. There's one called Cine Dailies. They're awesome. If you want to learn lighting, Tenfold is awesome. And if you want to learn like on set, this guy does like travel documentaries and works with latest gear. That's Cine Dailies. If you want to just be thrown into like a higher level of understanding lighting and production, Blaine Wistrop is awesome. He lives in New York and he just drops train of thought videos, which completely go against all of the high structure. I know, like, here's 3 points here. You suck at filmmaking. Here's like, it's like, no, he's just pure process. It's so cool to watch him just talk about, the whole ideation behind the process instead of this, oh, you have to do this because this is the only way to do that. So there's that. There's a guy, if you're into Blackmagic cinema cameras like I am, I have one back here. That's my baby. You can watch Of Two Lands. He does all Blackmagic cameras. And he reviews vintage lenses and like lower end cinema lenses, so you can get into that. It just goes on and on and on with people I could recommend. However, you can find my stuff on YouTube at Collin Ausbury. It's just my full name, or you can go to collinausbury.com. A lot of my portfolio is up there too. But my main and smash is Mario and Lucas. And every now and again, I like to open up a session with Ice Climbers, because it's just unexpected. And
that's good.
Yeah, if you open with Ice Climbers, your opponents are like, what? Who is this guy? Who does he think he is?
He must be a savant. He's playing with ice climbers.
Yeah, he must be an idiot.
Yeah. This is going to be easy.